Where does Cincinnati look? Because when we were on the Instant Reaction podcast, Bud mentioned is like, so what do you think's better, Cincinnati or Texas Tech? We're like, oh yeah, Cincinnati. What about across the entire reshuffled Big 12? Where does Cincinnati stack up in the new Big 12? Which again, like for a year, we'll have Texas and Oklahoma. But once we get Texas and Oklahoma out the paint, we're looking at the future of this conference with the UCF and Houston also added to the mix, BYU added to the mix, and the remaining teams and programs that are there. What is the selling point for Cincinnati as they go look to hire a replacement for Luke Fickell?
I mean, I don't know. It's hard to know what the top tier of the conference is right now. Like, yes, if you look at how things have gone the last 2 years, you'd say, well, TCU, Baylor seems to be like a tier one after Oklahoma and Texas, even Oklahoma State. But none of those programs are in a position to where I don't think a UCF or a Cincinnati or like a BYU and maybe even Houston, if things go right, could not compete right away. So it's hard to say. If we're trying to rank the jobs,
I don't think that this is going to be a situation where you show up to the league and you fall to the bottom.
No.
I think if we're selling the job, Cincinnati is a better job than Iowa State. I think Cincinnati is a better job than Kansas.
Yes.
Yes.
Cincinnati is a better job than Kansas State.
Disagree.
Yes. Really?
No, yeah, I think Cincinnati or Kansas State has a better coaching situation. I think they're a more established program. I think their NIL game is much stronger. Like, we know that, certain other schools tried to come take Kansas State's quarterback commit and they kept him. To me, that signals strong NIL. I do not think Cincinnati's a better job than Kansas State right now. I think Kansas State is more prepared to operate as a good Power 5 program.
Is Cincinnati better than Oklahoma State?
No.
TCU? No.
Definitely not.
Texas Tech?
Yes.
Similar.
I was going to say that feels similar.
Yeah. I don't think
Tommy Tuberville didn't think it was similar.
Was he going to get fired at Texas Tech?
Well, I mean, he was
eventually, yeah.
He would have for walking out on that dinner. We're not even paying. A jerk. Yeah, is it better than West Virginia?
Yeah. I think so.
It's similar. Like, West Virginia had a really good record in the old Big East, old American, and then they found out real quick how much tougher the Big 12 was than what they were playing in.
I think the recruiting footprint of Cincinnati makes it a better job than West Virginia.
Yeah, because you don't have to drive very far to find talent for Cincinnati. Like West Virginia, I don't know what the high school situation as far as recruiting there is, to just like a plethora of guys ready to step in and play Power 5 football.
Well, but don't you have to go to Florida?
You do. Yeah. Look, I mean, my thing is West Virginia is thinking it's going to steal Oregon's AD or Oregon State's AD, which I don't think is going to happen. But just the fact that they think they could pull that off is probably indicative of maybe the money they had to throw around. But I think those are similar jobs. Like, I don't think Cincinnati and West Virginia have a massive gap between each other.
All right, so now let's go against the other rivals. Is Cincinnati better job than BYU?
Yes. The institutional issues you have at BYU as far as who you can take in, I think are, yeah.
Is Cincinnati better job than Houston?
Equal.
Yeah, same.
And then UCF?
No.
Pretty similar. I mean, I think, like, I want to see how much UCF's NIL stuff steps up. They're definitely building.
Yeah, we got to see how, like, the same situation for Cincinnati. It's going to be, you got to see how they adapt to a new conference and a new kind of geographical footprint. But I think that in a vacuum, UCF's a better job than Cincinnati.
Cincinnati, based on our rapid analysis, is a top half job in a Power 5 conference.
Yeah.
They can take this to market, and they should be able to get an extremely qualified candidate. They don't need to pluck somebody on the way up. They should be able to take somebody potentially from another sitting Power 5 job. I didn't necessarily have that in mind when we first started talking about it, and we were like, which, by the way, if it is Urban, please be Urban. I'm just going to say that again. If Urban Meyer, graduate of Cincinnati, is it University of Cincinnati or Cincinnati University? It's University of yeah. Urban Meyer, University of Cincinnati graduate. If you want to come on back to college football, the Bearcats will have you. that drive to Urban Meyer's Pint House, it's not too far. You can make this happen.
Oh, it's also behind Baylor. We didn't ask about Baylor.
Oh yeah, because he said, sorry, Tom said TCU and Baylor's definitely like seems like the top tier, which are like interesting because from a university perspective, are they both getting the boost of being at better jobs because they're private schools with a lot of money, resources? Like
yes,
yeah.
I mean, I would push back a little bit on the idea that Cincinnati can pull a sitting Power 5 head coach. It is absolutely a bottom half of the Power 5 job, right? Every SEC job is better except for maybe Vandy, right? I think we would agree on that.
Do you think Cincinnati could pull Matt Campbell? Because that's a sitting Power 5 head coach.
I don't think Cincinnati wants Matt Campbell if what the AD said about valuing recruiting is
understand, but I'm saying, do you think it could if it wanted to? I'm just challenging your statement.
I don't, because I think Iowa State has more realistic expectations than what Cincinnati will probably have. Cincinnati is going to have a tough time with this, in my opinion, because they have been so damn good. They are averaging over 10 wins a year. They just made the playoff. There's a really good chance that they are losing, 2 to 6 games per year in conference play in the Big 12. It's going to be a really tough act to follow, and it's hard to sit here and tell your boosters, hey, guys, this is such a step up in competition. It's going to take a while. Now, maybe you sell it as, I've been in this league. I can guide you into this league. I know the pitfalls and the challenges of this league. I know what it takes to win in this league. But that's still a tough sell if you start out and all of a sudden you look over in the loss column and you got 8 in the first 2 years, which is very possible. Like, you jump this Cincinnati team in the Big 12 this year. Would they lose in the American 3 times? Twice? Yeah. I mean, you probably have 4 or 5 losses in the Big 12 this year with the Cincy team. That's 9-3.
I don't agree.
And they're losing a lot of guys to the transfer portal, and they don't have a quarterback going forward, it doesn't appear.
I don't agree that it's that difficult of a transition. We have proof of concept. TCU joined the Big 12 when it had Texas and Oklahoma, and it was winning the conference in its 3rd year there.
That's fair. That's really fair. They
and
also
Missouri showed up in the SEC and won the daggum East. There's context there, but also there are levels to that. Like, asking you to come and make a splash in the Big 12 is then different than asking you to come and make a splash in the SEC.
No, I don't think. I think it's because this is new ground. It's we've dealt with this where new programs join conferences. We're not seeing the kind of changes that we're seeing in this, where it's like 4 new teams are coming in as the 2 powers are leaving. So it's really hard to know for sure. But I don't think there's that big of a gap from being where Cincinnati has been the last few years to being a competitive team in the Big 12, at least not the new one.
All right. So the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years before West Virginia joined, right? In their league, 7-0, 5-2, 5-2, 5-2, 5-2, 5-2, 5-2. Since joining, 4-5, 2-7, 5-4, 4-5, 7-2, 5-4, 6-3, 3-6, 4-5, or 4-4, 4-5, and whatever they are this year. The Big 12 seems about 2 losses harder per year from a really good, Big East team than it is now.
But with the total reset, I think that you tell your boosters, if we get this higher right, then we jump up into the top tier.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm just saying, like, there's no USF, there's no Tulsa, there's no Temple on the schedule, right?
Correct. But I mean, there's West Virginia on the schedule.
That's true.
No, but I mean, I get what you're saying, but I think that, like, I don't think West Virginia, when it left the Big East for the Big 12, was in anywhere near as good a shape as Cincinnati is leaving the American for the Big 12. And I also think it was at a further disadvantage because at the time, like, it was just way the hell off by itself in the Northeast, playing a conference that was centered in the middle of the country. Whereas that's not going to be the case for Cincinnati. It has West Virginia nearby. It's got UCF down in Florida. I mean, it's not close, but it's more geographically aligned, I think, with the Midwest or the Prairie, which is the Big 12's home, than West Virginia ever was.
Who are the guys in TV do you think would make sense for one of these jobs? I'm looking at Tom Herman and Dan Mullen as kind of the 2 bigger names there. Do you think either one? Because I think they're in a position too where they only want to take a spot where they can win and where they can possibly contend for a playoff. So I do think Cincinnati would be a pretty good fit for that option.
Great fit for Tom Herman, in my opinion, because, he was at Houston, he was at Texas, and Cincinnati will want to make sure that it gets somebody that can get in and try to recruit in that Big 12 footprint. I think that I think that Herman would be a great hire for Cincinnati to try and go make a splash in that conference.
I think Urban makes a lot of sense.
He was also, let's see, how long was he at Ohio State? Not long though.
Probably a few years, right?
2 or 3 years, I think.
3 years. So, 3 years of recruiting and working your way around the state of Ohio as well. So,
He's got a ring he can wear around the state to show people.
let's see. Also a couple years at Iowa State. Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see, because do you think that, again, are we setting all of these jobs? One last point on this. Are we setting all these jobs at December 5th? You want to get this thing filled by December 5th, or else we got some problems on our hands?
How much can
Ideally.
you really do in 24? Like, let's just say, I mean, what if it's done the 3rd? Like, don't you need a full week to make sure guys aren't entering? I mean, the other thing too is once you enter, they're not necessarily gone, so you could salvage it. I don't know. I wonder if we're putting too much on that date. And it's like, I think the signing day is the most important one, because you got to get a class filled.